Welcome to MoonLore for the Aries full moon on October 20th, which occurs at 10:56 a.m. in Eastern Time at 27 degrees Aries. So this is the full moon that comes following the Libra New Moon on October 6th. What do you remember? What do you remember about that new moon, Jenny? I'm just curious.
Oh, the new moon on October 6th. Let's see. That was a day that Mercury was also in the mix and Mars was also in the mix. So with our new moon, we had to consider things about action and things about Mercury, but Mercury was also retrograde. So we were really kind of in the thick of that cycle. And when we started talking about this, you said that new moon started with a conversation because of that.
So here we are at the full moon. And, just to kind of go back and think about the cycles, for those of you that are new to thinking about this, we kind of equate the moon phases to the cycle of the planets. At the new moon, we plant a seed. At the full moon, we've got the full illumination of what we planted at that point. So if we want to think of that most recent new moon as a time that began with a conversation, maybe now at this full moon, we get to see the results of that conversation. So is there more that you want to say about the cycles? I don't feel like going into the details of the cycles, apparently.
No, I mean, I guess I'll just say that the full moon phase really is like what you just said, is when you get to see the fruits of that action or of that conversation. And it really is about action because it's an Aries moon. That was really all I wanted to add.
Okay,
so, yeah.
Well, in that case, the next thing we can do is talk about the fact that this full moon is in Aries. So let's talk about what Aries brings to the table.
Ooh, Aries.
Aries. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It is the cardinal fire sign. I never think of Aries without envisioning the screaming infant that demands what it wants now. That's what I always think of with Aries. What do you think of when you think of Aries?
I mean, I think of just more of the pioneering aspects of it. I mean, it's let's get something started. This is the original thing. And that's what I think. It's kind of like the kindling fire. That's what I think of a lot. Like when you put your newspaper and you put your dry sticks and then you light it up and it goes woof, like that's Aries. That's what I think about.
The birth of fire. Yeah, that's very much it. And if you've ever had an infant in the next room screaming, you realize the connection. It's the birth of fire. So, yeah. Do you want to share the chart now?
Sure, let's go ahead and we can talk a little bit more. I mean, Aries is a pretty simple energy to understand in a way because it's pretty basic. It's like, let's get something started and it's fire. So, but I mean, it does have some other things to it. I really always think of it as I said earlier, that pioneering energy. So I think about the pioneer crossing the plains and the fortitude and the drive that it takes to make something like that happen. So there's a tremendous amount of energy that goes into it. It's definitely like a powerful sign in that way. It's also just extremely immediate. Yeah. Now we're doing this now.
Yeah.
So
you think about what it takes to begin something, and your thing about the fire is perfect. It's like when that flame catches and it all of a sudden goes up. I also think a lot with Aries, another idea that always comes to me is if you're in a vulnerable position, Aries is such a powerful energy to have at your disposal. I always have this idea of if you're walking down a dark, scary alleyway and you hear somebody coming up behind you, you want to know that you've got some Aries energy within you, because that's the energy that can take on anything, or will certainly try.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting. I was just thinking from a personal point of view, I seem to attract into my life people with Aries moons, yourself included.
Oh, dear.
And I feel so whenever that happens, whenever somebody attracts a certain energy in their life, it's you're trying to learn that energy. And that's certainly something that I've learned from Aries moon is just that it's not action's going to happen now, and it's right now. It's, when a discussion is had, it's like the action comes immediately afterwards. And that's something I still feel like I have to get used to sometime. Like, oh, you mean now? Yeah, now, right now. Like, oh, so,
Yeah, there's not a lot of patience involved with Aries. That's for sure. It does. It happens now.
yeah,
Okay.
but it's extremely galvanizing. So that's the positive. It's, yeah. All right. What else are we
Okay.
going to talk about?
All right. Well, let's think about when the new moon happened. Like you said, Mercury was retrograde. Mercury was mixed up in the mix when the moon was here. So then since that new moon, over the past 2 weeks, the moon has traveled around half of the circle.
Mhm.
Okay, so as it travels around, one of the ways that I like to think about it is as the moon travels around, it kind of gathers the energy of the planets that it interacts with. So it has clearly along its path gone over Venus, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune, and Chiron. So it's really gathered up a lot of energy, which makes me think that Mars is ready to take action. It's
Yeah.
got all this other information that it's gathered since that initial conversation at the new moon.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like
And
that conversation started, and then it started gathering what it needs in order to come to this point of illumination.
yeah. And I think to even add more emphasis to that is the idea that on October 6th at the new moon, all of these things are still, many of these things, I should say, were still retrograde. Pluto was retrograde, Saturn was retrograde, Jupiter was retrograde. And I think it was on that day, October 6th, that Pluto turned direct. And not long after Saturn did, and then Jupiter did a couple days ago, along with Mercury. So this adds a tremendous amount of forward action after things kind of being more introverted or more inward facing or more kind of having to go down and in. Now everything is turned around and it's ready to keep moving forward. So there's a lot of energy to this full moon that is new.
There's a tremendous, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, the fact that so many of these planets have just recently turned direct. Okay, that's fascinating. So along with all of that, here we've got the new moon itself, the full moon itself rather. And clearly we don't have to look very tightly to see that Mars and the sun are conjunct. Mars ruling that Aries moon.
Mhm.
Mars rules Aries. So that just brings more energy, more quick action, more determination to take that action.
Yeah. So from my point of view, that kind of brings in that idea when you're always looking for three things, something to repeat at least 3 times. So we have an Aries moon, we have the fact that everything has just moved forwards, and now we have Mars conjunct the sun. Those three things are all kind of saying something similar. So, yeah.
And then if we want to just add a little more kick to it, we've got Pluto creating a T-square, squaring both ends of that configuration. And what does Pluto add to the mix?
Ooh, intensity. Yep.
Transformation, intensity, just, yeah, there's no way around it, kind of. That's what I think of with Pluto. There's no way around it. The action has to be taken. And it's so easy. It's easy to look at this. Oh, it's squares, it's challenges, it's difficulties, and think of it being a really hard thing. But at the same time, I love Pluto. I really, yes, it has that yeah, it transforms things. It destroys what's in its path for necessary transformation. On the other side of the destruction of Pluto is the empowerment. So a conversation began. Now we see, and we have to take action on what that conversation began, and the ultimate result, empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think overall, it's like sometimes I try to take a step back and look at the chart kind of overall as what is the statement this chart is making. And this chart is making a very clear statement about taking action that's a transformative action. It's going to have a big impact, but also not forgetting that both Sun and Mars are in Libra. So that folds in some of the more Libran suggestions around just harmony and balance. And it doesn't mean everything's all nice and pretty. That's not what that means at all. It means that an action must be taken in order to help bring about balance. So sometimes those actions can be very forceful, or have to go really deep and into some darker places in order to do that. But that is something that is part and parcel of this whole picture. And then it has that nice trine to Jupiter, so we like that.
Right,
that helps
especially given that Jupiter has just turned direct.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited about this direct motion of Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
It will be going into Pisces on December 29th, and Jupiter in Pisces is just a delightful placement. And I feel like this is like really giving us hope. It really, to me, it speaks of, okay, there was a conversation, some action has to be taken, but we know that it is leading us into a more positive future. That's how I would think about that.
Mm. Oh, yeah, I like that. It's nice. I mean, it's nice to think about Jupiter finally getting to clear itself of Aquarius later in the year, because it's been in sort of a Saturn dominated sign for all that time. And so now it's going to get to move into places, like, as you said, that it's sort of a happier place for Jupiter. So that's going to be something we all will look to for support as we continue into these later months and into the winter.
Right. And this doesn't really directly have anything to do with this full moon, but if you think back to the period of time when Jupiter was in Pisces before it retrograded back into Aquarius, it was from mid-May to late July, it was in Jupiter, it was in Pisces. Jupiter was in Pisces for that period of time. And so, thinking about what it was that expanded in your life during that time, and knowing that that is coming back at the very end of the year. So that was a little, I got pulled off in another direction, but that's
a good point.
I love thinking about it. I've been, ever since Jupiter turned direct, it's like, oh, that's really exciting. It's bringing us back to that expansion that occurred in that period of time between mid-May and late July.
Yeah, and also just part of that is with Mercury just having station direct, Mercury's going to retread that ground in Libra, wherever that falls in your chart. So it's, it's kind of going back over. It's a chance to kind of to just move through that energy of Libra. So
okay, that's awesome. So you're thinking about, looking at your own chart and considering where Aries is, where Libra is, and that polarity between those two houses is really going to give you a good idea of where you planted the seed with the conversation and where you're seeing that result in current time.
Nice. Yeah. So do you want to talk about where this is impacting people in their charts? I mean, this is the part Laurie and I get excited about, because this is where we move more away from the mundane part and into the natal part. Like, where is this hitting you personally? How can you take advantage of this energy to apply more of the courage of the warrior or the pioneer to a certain part of your life? Like, how can you do that? And we both get excited about that. So
the archetypes are so important. The pioneer is one of the best for Aries, and the warrior, what are some of the other archetypes? The leader.
Yeah. I mean, I think those pretty much sum it up. I mean, you could probably come up with a couple others, but
Yeah.
that's kind of it. I mean, the hero
Yeah.
in the story can be the Aries
Yeah.
archetype as well. So,
So, okay, if you have Aries rising, this full moon's going to fall in your first house. So, what's going to be highlighted there? What's going to be illuminated? It's going to be your assertive, independent personality, right? So, if you think about the polarity, that would be from the 1st to the 7th.
mm-hmm.
How would you think about that?
Well, I think then you're just considering the other end of the polarity, which is how is this going to impact your partnerships? How is this action that you're going to take for your own self-development going to provide a balance, a sense of balance in your partnerships? So, yeah.
Okay, good. So then if you have Taurus rising, this full moon itself is going to fall in your 12th house. So that, that's really illuminating your, I don't know. I think in terms of the courage it takes to really dig into your own unconscious beliefs or patterns somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, maybe I was also kind of thinking about this is also how you develop the compassion for other people. That's what we always end up talking a lot about that in the 12th house is the development of compassion and the perhaps the idea of selfless service, those kinds of ideals come into that. The way you can possibly think about the Libra end of it, so the Libra sun falling in your 6th house of routines, is that you have to do this somewhere. You can have this idealistic vision, but you have to employ it somewhere. So the 6th house is where you sign up to go and help out at the local soup kitchen, or you do the thing that actually incorporates it into your routines that impacts other people.
Okay. All right. So then if you have Gemini rising, this is going to fall in your 11th house, which is going to illuminate and highlight issues around the actions that need to be taken around developing or supporting a community of like-minded people in your life.
Nice. Yeah, and if you want to incorporate more of the polarity and include the Libra part of it, it just brings in when you're standing up in the 11th house, you're accepting the love of other people. And then in the 5th house, you're giving that love back. So it kind of plays into this how you love other people unconditionally. And part of it is that you let yourself be supported by your community.
Interesting. I like that. Okay, so then if you've got Cancer rising, this full moon is falling in your 10th house. So it is really illuminating the need to take action around leadership in your career or some other manner of engaging in the outside world.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. And just peppering in that other piece about Libra, you're just thinking about the concepts of fairness and justice that are at the roots as you actualize yourself in your profession.
Right. So it's sort of the support from the home and family that gives you the impetus or the ability to take action and be a leader out in the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So then if you've got Leo rising, this is falling in your 9th house, and it's really highlighting independent action, dynamic action around your worldview, your philosophical understanding, taking some sort of action in that area of your life.
Yeah, and then bringing a sense of equity and fairness to your immediate environment. So I was thinking in terms of like, if the 9th house is where you're taking action and you're the gathering of wisdom for you to be a teacher to other people, then the 3rd house is where you create this equitable classroom for people to be able to absorb the information. So that was something I was thinking about.
Yeah, thinking about the polarities is really helpful with the full moons. Okay, so then if you've got Virgo rising, then this full moon is going to fall in your, I didn't miss one, did I?
No, you're great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is falling in your 8th house, and it's illuminating your need to take direct action regarding other people's baggage. you know, kind of taking action on how you navigate other people's belief systems.
Mm, that's good. I like that.
Mm.
Yeah, and if you would just want to add in the other end of the polarity, it's highlighting the place where you are giving yourself love. So, in other words, you're setting good boundaries because it is what you must do to take care of you. It's, yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating on a personal level, Jenny, because that's mine. That is fascinating. That's fascinating because I actually, on the day of this new moon, I'm in a position, that's just fascinating, of having to take an action on navigating boundaries. That it's just, I love this. This is so, so cool. Okay, so then, sorry to bring that into such a personal space. I just
Great.
couldn't quite help it. Now, if you've got Libra rising, this is falling in your 7th house. So it's highlighting some impulsive, energetic action that you have to take to engage yourself in equal partnership of some sort.
Yeah, and as you do that, you are just creating a situation of interdependence for yourself, which is what you want to do in your relationships. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
That's perfect. Okay, then if you've got Scorpio rising, it's falling in your 6th house. So it's illuminating some need to take action on your own physical health, your own patterns of behavior,
Yeah, I like
taking
that.
some action there.
Yeah, and then the other end of that is like, and as you're doing that, you're incorporating, let's say an exercise routine. The reality is that you are actually making an offering to the divine in the sense of like your body is your temple. So I like tying those together.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I love that. That's really good. Okay, so then if you've got Sagittarius rising, this full moon is falling in your 5th house. So it's really highlighting the need to take action on how you give love, whether that be giving love to another person, a child, or your own creativity.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, and I guess the Libra end of that is just it really is just the interplay of their community. Well, it's kind of, I like that back and forth between as you give love, how are you allowing the receiving of love? Because they really play into each other back and forth. So that's where that lands.
Right. So you could think about it as, 2 weeks ago, you started a conversation with your community that now results in your expanded your ability to take action on a creative project of giving love.
Oh yeah, that's good. Well
That's
said.
great. Okay, so then if you've got Capricorn rising, this is going to fall in your 4th house and it's going to illuminate some courage, some action that has to be taken in your relationship with home and family.
Yeah, I like that. I was thinking about yeah, just getting your family involved in some energetic Aryan activity, like making everyone break a sweat in a good way together.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Some construction project, tear down a wall.
Yeah. No, there you go. And then when you go back to work, you feel all sort of like you've done this Aries activity. So you feel much more at ease and at balance in your vocation.
Right,
So,
very, very good. Okay. So then if you've got Aquarius rising, this is falling in your 3rd house. So it's highlighting the need to take action and be really assertive in your communications.
yeah. And the other end of that is like allowing other just different people to inform your worldview. Basically, having Libra up in the 9th house is like really just seeing that end of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and then finally, last but not least, if you have Pisces rising, this full moon is falling in your 2nd house. So this brings up, the need to take action on some pioneering values, your personal values, taking action on your personal values, or even, it might be on issues of money and resource. Maybe it's time to go out and spend a lot of money on something, taking action on something along those lines,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
some resource.
I was thinking when you use the second house, I mean, just so you said, I focus more on the values part of it with the Aries, like taking action, and applying, trusting that you have all the resources you need to take action to start something new. And then the other end of that is as you feel that way, then you're much more able to kind of take everybody else's like bullshit with a grain of salt. Because you're empowered in yourself and you're kind of like, okay, whatever, I'm doing my thing. So I can just be here and support other people and what they're doing
That's
and
awesome.
not get tied up in it. So
That's awesome. All right.
yeah.
Well, that covers all of those. The only other thing, actually, let me see here. The only other thing that we didn't mention was the new moon in Aries.
Hmm. Oh
Which,
yeah.
yeah, we didn't mention that. And that's, you know, the larger cycle. When we look at the full moon here, we think back 2 weeks ago to the most recent new moon. But then we can also look all the way back 6 months ago to the new moon in Aries. That was also a beginning point that is being illuminated now. So you can think of both, you know, the short term cycle, which is the 2 weeks ago, or the longer term 6 months ago. That was on April 11th was the new moon in Aries. So you want to think also about, you know, what started then, what began at that point that you're now able to see illuminated using the same house, you know,
Mm-hmm.
thinking of it as the illumination is still in the same house we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So these things are all connected, and this kind of highlights the process of life rather than isolating individual actions. So I like that. That's great.
Okay, so I think we've covered it, and I think that was it for another episode of MoonLore. And if you stop sharing that, so that people can see our lovely faces. So we will do this again in 2 weeks for the next new moon. And in the meantime, you can find Jennie at hiddenpathastrology.com. You can find me at astrolore.org. And we're both available for consultations and teaching. And I think that's everything.
That's it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennie. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Lori.
Bye-bye.
Bye.